Wait, real quick. That literally was like a smiting.
Yeah, so what happened?
So there was a far-right rally in Brazil and lightning struck. And like a bunch of people are in the hospital.
It killed not killed rather, but like it injured like 70 people.
Yeah, it was like really serious.
There's no way you don't evacuate yourself when you're struck by lightning.
Oh, I was like, I don't think you can really like exit the premises when that's happening.
No. You stand there and sort of shake while a sort of bluish.
But you're talking about something else.
No, I think you evacuate your bowels when you're struck by lightning. How would you not? I mean, have you ever been shocked?
Many people
before?
do that just when, faced with a gun.
Well, I think it would be a touching tribute to Bolsonaro for dozens, in fact, a score and almost a half of his supporters to simultaneously evacuate themselves while being shocked by lightning, which was sent, of course, from Almighty God.
Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a TrueAnon rule. If you have been struck by lightning, just like if you don't like water because you don't like the way it tastes or you're not hungry, that is God telling you to die. That is a direct intervention from God.
No, it's not about telling you to die. It's just giving you a little warning.
It's if you don't like water.
Hey, I'm here. I see you. I hear you.
It's time to come to me.
Not yet. Because you're not going to die. It's just I'm going to shock you. I'm going to let you know.
I totally
let my
disagree.
presence be known.
I totally disagree. Obviously, you know that one of my long nurtured hopes is to kind of go towards the light at some point in my life.
Yeah, but not the lightning.
I know, but the lightning is God bringing the light that you go towards to you.
No. That light is totally different, and that tunnel is totally different. The lightning is a shock. It's a like, bam, I'm hitting you. I'm real. I'm here. Don't doubt me. But then I'm gone. And you're okay. You don't feel great. You got struck by lightning. Maybe now you believe in God, and it's time to move on with your life.
Interesting. I fear you may be theologically psychotic.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. My name is Brace.
I'm Liz.
I'm producer Young Chomsky.
And this is TrueAnon.
You said it so haltingly.
You were so sad.
And I don't want to do anything or say, I don't want to bring private business into public, but don't if I kind of move, how sometimes I step to you real quick when we're in front of other people to assert dominance or whatever. And I get really mad at you if you don't flinch.
Uh-huh.
You're doing a verbal version of that on the show.
I'm stepping to you, or I'm
no,
flinching?
No. You're flinching. You took a second to say your name as if I was going to hit you. It just makes me look abusive.
I think all this lightning talk has kind of got me feeling a little thunderstruck.
Great movie.
Never seen it. Have seen Moonstruck though. The house from Moonstruck, of course, is where Amy Schumer currently lives, although she
no, she sold the house, I believe.
To buy more. I need more Ozempic money.
Did she?
I think she is selling the house because she did do a Meghan Trainor. she is now a I don't know what you want to call it, rail thin, and divorced her husband so she can have sex with hotter guys.
Doing a Meghan Trainor now means something else, actually.
What does it mean?
It means doing surrogacy.
She had a surrogate?
You didn't see this whole thing?
Was she like, I'm not going back to that. I'm not going back to what I was.
Maybe.
Oh, man.
Yeah, she had a surrogate for her third pregnancy. Well, it's not her pregnancy, her third kid. And then posted a photo of doing skin to skin contact with the newborn. The freshie born.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of was like, wait a second, that's not really because skin to skin is scientifically,
It's to bond you with
based
your-
on
Yeah.
with the birth mother. So people then it was a whole thing.
They
Anyway,
didn't let me do skin to skin because I was too handsy with the doctors as they was taking me out.
it's a different kind of skin to skin, palm to palm.
Well, I
Holy
was rubbing my
palmer's
palms
kiss,
together. I was rubbing my
actually.
palms together. I was like, take off those little berets or whatever you guys wear, the surgeon berets. The surgeon
Surgeon
yarmulkes.
berets.
Yeah, they got on.
Oh my god!
And take off that little mask. I want to see your lips. My first words, actually.
You said that to the nurses.
I said, oh, you look
You
plump.
said, "Hello, nurse."
Hello, nurse. You look like you got a pair of plumpers. I'm not talking about your breasts because I still view those as food. I'm talking about your lips because I view those as a different kind of nourishment of which I am in great need. So
The most
today,
talkative baby.
I came out talking. I was talking 2 months. I was talking to 2 months.
Baby yapper.
Oh my God. I'm going to teach your fucking kid to talk.
Ugh, please don't.
First word's going to be brace. Brace.
Can you imagine? But
Brace.
while screaming.
Brace.
And
I'm going to
no.
teach your kid
Brace,
to cry.
No.
I'm going to teach your kid to cry louder. So loud.
You're going to be the annoying one who's like, I got your kid a drum kit.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I got your kid Winston's.
Here's a karaoke machine for your baby.
Yeah. Hey, I got your kid one of those little 22s. Teach
A
him about
baby.
safety.
Yeah.
Get him a baby 22.
Baby guns. Do they make those? I mean,
They do
we
make guns for
would.
children. In fact, I would say that the U.S. arms manufacturing industry, all guns are for children, considering what happens in the schools these days.
Well, and not schools, out in the streets. We're going to talk about that today.
Out in the streets. We'll talk about that. We have a lot of things to talk about. First, we need to talk about Syria.
Yeah,
Because
we're going to do that a little bit ago, but current events intervened, which is crazy because the situation in Syria is unraveling and still insane.
Yeah.
And perhaps one of the most complex of all of our current events.
I will say, ahead of getting into this, for those, the Syrian civil war has an interesting effect on people. It has driven a lot of people into a state of insanity and has driven, especially its foreign viewers and occasionally fans of whichever side, into just a psychosis unmatched by anything else I've ever seen in my entire life.
Do you think that has to do with the Syrian war specifically or the time? Because I also think the Ukraine and Russian war has a similar effect.
I would agree with that to an
I'm just
extent,
curious what you think.
but it's almost like, I think with Ukraine-Russia war, it's a little different because there's two sides, basically. With Syria,
sure.
there's like 10 sides, and within those sides,
Right.
multiple other different sides, and then
And then
it's
there's the Turkish side.
well, that's many sides at once on occasion.
That's how he likes to do it.
And there's also, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's one, the time period that it started during, and more and more people using the internet in unhealthy ways. And also, and really it's just because there's so many sides to it. So people became occasionally very passionate and occasionally almost psychotic. We are seeing somewhat of a resurgence of that right now because there is I don't know what you want to call this, one of the unresolved areas of the Syrian civil war is undergoing a resolution, I guess we could say. So to bring us back a little bit, the last time we talked about Syria was in December of 2024. And I would say, if you don't know what's happening in Syria,
which, fair enough.
I guess fair enough. But it might be worth it to re-listen to that episode for a moment.
Yeah.
But basically where we left it was former HTS and former Al-Qaeda and former, I don't know why I pronounced it like the real way, Al-Qaeda, and former associate and close companion of ISIS chief Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, a guy named Jalani,
Mm.
basically blitzed Damascus in essentially like a week's time. And the Syrian government fell very quickly. The Russians were in a sort of weird holding pattern when they sort of started evacuating and then kind of just stopped. Assad fled the country, is living in Russia. There's all kinds of crazy articles that are like rumored what he's doing. I think a lot of people have sort of settled on gaming. Although there's so many stupid
enough.
fair enough. There's so many stupid fucking memes associated with the Syrian civil war, which is actually the thing everyone, if you become a Syrian civil war commentator long enough, you become a NAFO in some way, like one of those kind of like Ukraine crazy people who thinks only in meme speak. But he fled the country. Jalani took over, and since then, Jalani has really immediately launched into rehabilitating his image, started wearing suits, started going by his dead name, Al-Shara. And
he did a bunch of like US media.
Oh yeah.
60 Minutes type. I don't know if it was specifically 60 Minutes, but he did a bunch of like sit down interviews with journalists. Sort of like, so tell me about your de-radicalization.
Yeah. I mean, and that was kind of like how he was presented. He's like, I'm the reform jihadist through my years, because he was sort of in control of Idlib, which was by a certain point in the war was like the breakaway rebel province that it was controlled by the opposition and then was controlled by Jalani, and how he has moderated his extreme views. Because remember, this was a guy who's in Al-Qaeda. And Al-Qaeda obviously is not exactly the same as ISIS, but ISIS came from Al-Qaeda.
It's a cousin.
It's certainly a close cousin in many ways.
It's the kind of cousin you could marry.
ISIS was a little more like the goth cousin, I guess. Like, it's like, give it a rest. Like coming to to dinner with snake bites in and, this and like a tongue that's split or whatever. It's like, all right, give it a rest. But
he kind of came out and he was like, I always said the worst thing about ISIS was it wasn't into free markets enough.
Yes. And so he sort of positioned himself as like an abundant, I mean, it's sort of like a exaggeration, but an abundance liberal, where he's really into, and I'm not joking about this, like he's like talks about we need to build up Syrian institutions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, have like a real country. And as opposed to whatever they were doing in Idlib, where they were kind of doing some versions of that. The reality on the ground, though, is a little bit different, because, well, Shara himself, however, and I'll probably interchange using Shara and Jalani throughout this episode, and so you'll forgive me. While he might have allegedly, turned a new leaf or whatever, there are many components within his administration and his armed forces that maybe don't share in his newly enlightened views, which it's not even clear that he himself believes. There was famously within the Syrian civil war a large number of foreign jihadist groups that took part. Some of these groups were folded into ISIS. Some of these groups were folded into various opposition groups. What Jalani did in Idlib is he sort of subsumed all groups under his command or control. He kind of tamed everybody and got most people on his side, or he jailed them or killed them. That means that there is now in what they're calling sort of the Syrian transitional government. That's the other thing. Is Syria has like a lot of, no one really knows what to call the new army or anything. Some people are calling it still the SAA, Syrian Arab Army. I'm not sure what it's officially called, to be honest.
I feel like transitional is good because you have to like denote some sort of break, or at least like as we're talking about this, we need to. Because it really is a different organization.
Certainly. I mean, a different organization, both in the prior government under the Baathists, and then somewhat different than his government in Idlib. So, in that period, like where the sort of the chips landed after that episode, was he had much of the country, although that was kind of in name only, as especially in the east of the country, a lot of it is kind of just like, it's not a lot there. There's like a few towns. It's a lot of desert. The west of the country, especially concentrated more towards the coast, is much more densely populated in the north. In the north, however, the northeast, I guess we should say, So if you're thinking of Syria right now,
If
was
you're not, just pull it up on
Just-
Google.
or just imagine directions, but yeah, pull it up on Google. Take a look.
Take a look. You might not know what it looks like. It might surprise you. And you go, really? That's how big it is?
It's a big country.
It is. I think people forget how big it is.
It is. In the Northeast, however, there was a large concentration of, I would say, somewhat motley assortment of forces centered around the YPG, People's Protection Units, and the YPJ, which is the Women's Protection Units, which are mostly Kurdish militias. And then there's which are constituent parts of the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, along with like a ton of various former revolutionary organizations, I guess some former elements of the government, various tribal groups. And they had a strip of the border, and that kind of curved down sort of towards Raqqa and enveloped much of the desert in Deir ez-Zor there. In that area, especially in Deir ez-Zor, there was also some American military bases. And in Qamishlo, which is the largest city up there and sort of more in the like actual northeast, there was until 2 days ago, a sizable Russian air base there.
Yeah. That's now been evacuated, right?
Yeah, sort of hastily evacuated. Which it's weird. I don't know exactly why they chose this timing, because it didn't look like Qamishlo was about to be invaded, but we'll see. Who knows? Then on the coast, centered around Latakia, that is the region where a lot of Alawites live. So again, we're going back to last year. That's the region. And in the northeast, there's a lot of Kurds sort of right along the border, and then a lot of Arab sort of tribal groups in Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor. And I'm not saying tribal as in like a derogatory way. I mean, there's literally just sort of how families or society is organized on kind of a clan basis in a lot of that part of the country. In Latakia and on the coast, there was a lot of Alawites. So Alawites are a minority in Syria. They also are the minority that the Assad family belonged to, and a large component of the Syrian civil war was of a somewhat sectarian nature, where also a lot of people did not like being ruled over by Alawites, regardless of their whatever they didn't like about Assad. That was just a fact. And after Assad left the country, a lot of Alawites there, who, by the way, I don't even know how many, maybe 5% of Syria's population is Alawite, were freaked out that they were going to get massacred. And that's exactly what happened. There was large-scale massacres on the coast of Syria that happened in the spring of last year. The militias that belonged to the newly formed Syrian army went wild, widespread sectarian killings, way over 1,000 dead. I think it's over 1,500. Might be a couple thousand. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I don't have it at the top of my head, but thousands of people massacred, whole families killed, a lot of it videotaped, and not really to any noises from Damascus and from the new government there. It was sort of seen both internationally and within the country as massacres that were kind of just allowed to happen. Essentially revenge sectarian violence for what people perceived as Alawites being pro-government during the Syrian civil war, which, a lot of them were, but obviously doesn't fucking matter. A lot of these people were poor families that lived there. And even if they weren't, that's just not how you do things. This gave the impression that the Syrian government was unable to control the new army. And the fact is, there's a lot of foreign jihadists in this army there. The Turkestan Islamic Party, for instance, which are our famous Uyghurs, who have been sort of sequestered in Turkey, and I think have an official presence there, but many of their fighters have been fighting in Syria for a long time. They join, and they are full-on just like jihadists. There's not really any kind of gussing up you can do about them.
Yeah.
A lot of them joined the Syrian army, and they are incorporated as a brigade. I think it's like the 84th Brigade. But I think that's an important thing. It's the 84th Division. It's the members of the Turkestan Islamic Party and a ton of other Al-Qaeda affiliates, foreign Al-Qaeda affiliates, joined the 84th Division. 84th Division is unleashed on the coast, and it does not bode well. It looks like there's going to be a big resurgence of sectarian fighting. Similarly, the government forces go after the Druze, which are sort of more focused also in the south. And in that was also coincided with Israel coming into the country, which they'd been bombing since Shara took over. They bombed like all of the
Israel
weapons.
never really stopped bombing
Yeah.
Syria since
I think you can actually
2015.
No,
I don't.
They've been
Earlier.
Syria occupies Israel occupies part of Syria, the Golan
Right.
Heights, and has for decades, which is now Trump Heights, or there's part of it that's called Trump Heights.
That's a terrible name.
I know it's
other things aside,
it's a tacky name.
It doesn't
No?
sound. There's no ring to it.
It's tacky.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
So large-scale massacres of the Druze there, that the Israelis come in more and take more of the country. In the meantime, Shara seems very focused on getting the Caesar Act sanctions lifted on Syria. So Caesar Act was a large-scale, big sanctions regime that the U.S. put on Syria, and that was not lifted. It made it very difficult for Syria to do business with the world. It was not lifted after Jelani took over. Shara. And so he was really campaigning and gussing up his image to basically all in preparation for an eventual meeting with Trump, where he would talk him into lifting the sanctions. So I think they massacre about 1,000, maybe 1,500 Druze, and then some die, and there's actual battles too, because there's Druze militias as well. That area, they're kind of just like leaving alone for now. Suwaida, I think. I'm not an expert on this, but it's sort of reached somewhat of a stalemate there. It's also a tense situation. In the meantime, during this period of March, like in March or April, May of last year, two other things happened. One is that the SDF leadership, Mazloum Abdi, so is the sort of the general in charge of the SDF, makes a visit to Damascus and signs a tentative agreement with Shara. And that tentative agreement, I don't know exactly what it says. I mean, there's been various leaks, but it's kind of unclear. Says that the SDF will be incorporated into the new Syrian army on a wholesale basis. And this is important for some reasons I think will become clear. On a wholesale basis. So like the YPG or elements of the YPG and SDF will join it as like their own divisions, and they will also be sort of placed, I suppose, in the Northeast. Also, negotiations over limited self-rule in the Northeast, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing happens after that. This this is going to happen. We have sort of till the end of the year to figure out how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And then nothing happens after that. One thing that I should note, in May, the PKK, which is an organization that it's a Kurdistan Workers' Party or Workers' Party of Kurdistan, that the YPG and YPJ stem from, but it's a transnational organization. It's in Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and in Syria. The leader, which has been Abdullah Öcalan, who has been imprisoned on an island prison ever since Hafez al-Assad buckled to Turkish pressure and had him leave Syria in the 1990s, and was captured in Africa by Mossad and CIA and taken to Turkey. He's been on an island prison ever since, where he at one point changed his ideology from a sort of orthodox Marxism-Leninism tinged with Maoism to democratic confederalism, which is proven itself to be somewhat less durable and somewhat amorphous. He signs a peace deal, or he doesn't sign, he announces a peace deal with the Turkish government, his greatest foe, and says that the PKK will disarm. Also, very unclear what happens after this, because as far as I know, there was like a few ceremonies where they burned a few old AKs, and then nothing else happened. So,
wait, but what's your read on that?
Well, there's some things I'd say on the podcast and some things not on the podcast, but I don't think it matters. I don't fucking know, to be totally honest. Nobody knows that I've talked to, including people who know things. It's really unclear. I mean, Öcalan is not, I mean, he's literally been in an island prison of where he is the only prisoner for decades.
Okay.
Yes. It's a little like, all right, well, you haven't really been calling the shots for a while.
Right.
There's been a
Little
large
Weekend
scale.
at Bernie's sort of situation.
Yes. Yeah. And there's been large scale Turkish drone assaults against the PKK leadership in these Kandil Mountains, which are sort of in northern Iraq, for the past, really since drones, I guess, were invented. But they've been trying to assassinate PKK leaders for a while, and I don't think they've stopped since then. And also, there's still, I'll say this: the PKK as an organization may have a ceasefire.
You're doing some air quotes here.
I'm doing some air quotes, but there's like 50 other PKK organizations that are the exact same thing.
That's why it's like very confusing.
I'm confused too.
Okay.
But I think that's important because Turkey is a player in this. And one of the biggest roadblocks against the SDF kind of getting anywhere in northern Syria is the fact that Turkey is the neighbor and views them as terrorists. It should be noted too that the U.S. also has the PKK on the terror list.
Yeah.
So fast forward to sort of later in 2025, Shara meets with Trump. Trump is like, I love this guy. Lifts the Caesar Act sanctions.
Could have seen that coming a mile away.
Yeah, he charmed the shit out of him. Lifts the Caesar Act sanctions and starts doing patrols with Shara's army. In fact, I think 3 Americans were killed in what that was, there was like that ISIS attack.
That's right. Yeah.
That was on a patrol with Shara's people.
That was like spring last year, right? Something like that.
And there's been a lot of reporting that's come out that the U.S., by the way, the U.S. had a $10 million bounty on Shara's head until he became president for being a terrorist. Turns out, now reporting has shown that they were working with him for quite a bit longer than that.
Not surprising.
Turks, the Turks, the thing about Idlib too is that they were actually able to somewhat circumvent some Caesar Act stuff as opposed to any other actor in Syria because they actually had direct trade with the Turks. Who backed Shara as well. And like it was sort of seen, Shara's assault on Damascus in December of 2024 was sort of seen as happening with Turkey's not only assent, but active help.
Participation.
Exactly, yeah.
Aid.
Which is fucked up because Erdogan and fucking Assad used to go on vacation together.
They might still.
You think he'll flee to Russia?
Who knows? Who knows?
He's rocking. Erdogan is really, that's a Teflon gentleman right there. So
I think didn't Trump made the funniest fucking joke when he was like sitting with him, where he was like, it was something like, you guys are worried about me, you want to talk about like not having elections, talk to this guy or something like this. It was so funny.
Yeah. It's also, to be clear, like, Jelani is sort of painted as a Democrat. Western liberal media has been very kind to Jelani and sort of painted him as a Democrat. Shara. It's painted him as a Democrat.
But to the point where it almost feels like dated, like the way that they're doing it. It's so Obama era.
Yeah, because it's like
the kind of like humanitarian, free market, liberal gloss that they're trying to put on literally this like ex Al Qaeda guy, or not even ex at this point. Anyway.
Yeah.
But there's something like it's so obviously absurd, but then also in this moment, it feels very like retread. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Agreed. So we're in this weird place now where there's been basically like, aside from, of course, the government massacres in the south and in the west, kind of this weird sort of stalemate in northeastern Syria. Now, I was in the YPG in 2016, and I've said on this program and else, I basically said since 2017, since this actually started happening, that the YPG going into Deir ez-Zor, which is sort of south of Raqqa, and that the countryside south of there was a huge mistake. I think that they were basically told to do it by the Americans, and they did, because there has been very little strategic gain from that. In that time, they were able to get control of some oil wells there. It's actually been really unclear. We've covered that on the show. I think we covered that in like one of our first 30 episodes. It's actually really unclear what has been kind of going on with that oil. Sanctions have kind of also affected the oil that have come from that. Regardless, it's now in Syrian government hands, but I guess I'll get into that in a second. That occupation, or that, I don't know how to call it, their time in Deir ez-Zor essentially turned into SDF YPG's Vietnam, because a lot of the tribes there were really not amenable to their presence. A lot of people there had, ISIS, sort of the ideologies that were maybe close cousins or brothers with ISIS's, were quite popular there. And the SDF, which was sort of YPG's kind of attempt to do this, brotherhood of peoples, multi-ethnic style thing. And, the people I met some people who were very sincere about this project. They came up against some limitations, and some big ones. The people that they tended to hire to incorporate locals to run the areas that the SDF were in. In Deir ez-Zor, it was disaster after disaster. The people who joined were gangsters. There was a ton of like inter-clan killing, very little stability. And there was, at some points they'd have to arrest like the leadership there, and then they'd free them. And it was just like, it was a fucking complete mess. And it did not endear an already hostile populace to them coming in there. So SDF is also made up, as I said before, of like a lot of tribes, Arab tribes around there. And in January, it's still January, but earlier in January, about a month after this sort of agreement had expired, or the deadline had passed for the SDF to make this agreement with with Jelani, aka Shara, some movement happened. Do you remember Aleppo?
Of course.
Who can forget Aleppo?
And what is Aleppo?
You're kidding.
No.
Don't get anyone started on Aleppo.
Well, would you believe it if I told you that the Syrian Arab army was once again besieging a neighborhood in Aleppo? Because that's precisely what happened. There was 2 neighborhoods in Aleppo that had been under control of the YPG since the beginning of the war. Sort of I knew a couple of people who had been through there, and things were always much more malleable in Syria than I think people who are maybe outside watchers are willing to believe. Everybody talked to everybody. Everybody dealt with everybody. But there were these 2 neighborhoods in Aleppo that were essentially under the control of the YPG. The Syrian opposition never took them, and the Syrian government, sort of just coexisted alongside. And the Syrian government under Assad also had a sort of coexistence relationship with the SDF YPG as well. They didn't fight each other. And in Kamishlo, they shared control of the city, somewhat with Aleppo as well. But the SDF just stuck to these neighborhoods. Shara said no more and started besieging these 2 neighborhoods. The SDF, it was not a good situation. Getting besieged in Aleppo is generally not a situation. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever find yourself in that position in your life, try to get out of it. There was I believe a ceasefire struck, and SDF forces left, which was actually pretty shocking. They left Aleppo. I think they figured that the positions were not defensible. They needed to buy some time in order to negotiate, but it was a sort of stunning rout to begin a series of stunning routes or routes. What is it called when you rout somebody? It's you rout
Yes.
an enemy army. Immediately after, the Syrian government, which has been cultivating sort of tribes that were constituent members of the SDF for quite a while. They actually have a guy that has an office that is basically dedicated to like cultivating different tribes and clans. They sort of play their hand, and in Raqqa, which had always sort of had a difficult, I don't think Raqqa's had a very nice time for a long time, but it had a difficult relationship between the SDF there and the Syrian Democratic Council and some of the residents. There have been protests and riots and things like this. In Raqqa and in Deir ez-Zor, basically all the Arab members of, not all, I shouldn't say that actually, but quite a few large groups of Arab fighters within the SDF switched sides to Shara's government. And I think the SDF, what was left of it, and the YPG kind of figured out what time it was and took off. They really didn't put up much of a fight. They took off.
Which also was shocking to, I think, people
Yes.
watching this.
Oh, yeah. Because they went from controlling so much of that part of the country, which again, there's not a lot there in certain parts. You know what I mean? Like in Deir ez-Zor, it's like there's some areas of habitation, but a lot of it's just desert. So it's a little deceiving that they like, it's not like they control these giant population centers there.
Can I pause here for a second and ask you a question?
Absolutely. Anytime.
Because, and I might be getting ahead of myself because I don't know when you want to talk about this, but there were highly publicized camps of ISIS fighters all throughout the north, if I'm correct, that the YPG, I think it was primarily, right, was tasked with sort of overseeing. A lot of them, women and children, surprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the YPG. I mean, but in the ISIS camps I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Specifically. But what kind of happened with that whole situation?
Well, ISIS is a strange sort of beast because there was a lot of people in ISIS. And when they lost the stronghold of,
by the way,
there was a lot of people. There was a lot of people. People liked ISIS. I don't think that they were good.
I know, but people did like them.
There was some fans. I met some fans, you know? And it's interesting the sort of fandom wars that took place. But after Mosul, they lost Mosul, ISIS did. And then Raqqa, their capital, after that, there was just a lot of people that had been in ISIS and that still loved ISIS. And that I think everyone was like, what do we do with you? You know? And I'll say this. I think it was a big mistake for the international community because that's really, I think, where a lot of the blame lies here. To figure out the best solution would be to essentially set up camps in an area ruled by a non-state actor and hope that they, guard them indefinitely?
I mean, it does feel a bit like you're doing that as a kind of like, well, let's just see how this goes, or in case something.
Yeah, let them loose again.
I mean, is that, I know that that's like a very cynical and perhaps inappropriate thing to say on the podcast, but it doesn't look like it was meant to be a permanent solution.
Well, I mean, what does that look like? Are you going to grow to be 100 years old in this camp? Like there wasn't really, that's the thing, is like there was no. So there was some international, there's a few problems with that. And actually, I'll say this, I was planning a trip, in the active stages of planning a trip, to go to Al Hol camp in March. I was going to go to Al Hol, and I was also going to try to see what the fuck that the U.S. military was doing in Deir ez-Zor. That trip is now canceled, as far as I know. Well, certainly the Al Hol trip is. I was going to go with a couple of people, and now that's not happening anymore.
I think that's for the best.
There was a camp of, I think at one point, like 13,000, now down to 7,000, mostly women and young children, called Al Hol. And there was at various other prisons, a few thousand each, I believe, of the men that were sort of scattered around. Now, that is, everyone in Syria is poor. There's not like a rich part of Syria, to be clear. Like the civil war fucked everybody. And the sanctions fucked everybody. But this is a lot of people to be imprisoning. There is a lot of money that that Western states, the U.S. and Europe, were supposed to give to YPG, YPJ, and SDF to guard it. But like there wasn't repatriation in enough numbers necessary to actually clean these camps out. Because as we saw with like the case of Shamima Begum in Britain, people were like, you fucking joined ISIS. You lose citizenship.
Yeah. It's a tough sell, particularly in this, we'll say, international climate.
Yes.
To say, hey, we need to bring our ISIS prisoners home.
Exactly. And
That's a
that's
tough
the thing
one.
is, because a lot of the ISIS, that's the other thing, is a lot of the ISIS prisoners were like first or second generation immigrants. And so
Right.
people were, and this was, again, like this was all happening during like, not all happening, but a lot of this was during like fucking get Brexit done and shit like that. It was not
Yes.
the environment that this was politically viable in. So the
It's only
European
gotten
countries,
worse, by the way.
Oh,
Nobody
yeah.
knows what to do with ISIS.
well, there's also like thousands of Iraqi citizens in there as well. And Iraq was like, nah, we're good.
I feel
why don't
like-
you just keep them?
That's a TrueAnon rule. Nobody knows what to do with ISIS.
Nobody knows what to do with their ISIS. And the fact is, another TrueAnon rule, we don't like it. But if you're a country that can refuse repatriation, maybe just refuse it. Because then what's going to happen? The other guys have to take care of it. They're not going to let them go.
Well, but so that leads us now we're to my next question, which was sort of built into the first question, which is like, now what has happened to all these ISIS men, women, and children?
So there's a cynical way to look at it, which is that one of the reasons that Turkey has not been able to successfully, or has been dissuaded from invading northern Syria and fighting their ancient enemy, the YPG, which they associate with the PKK, fair enough, is because there are all these ISIS prisoners there. And there's sort of an implicit thing where it's like, well, we might let them loose, I mean, the
Right.
SDF has never said that. To be clear, they've never said that. But if we're being realistic here, that was, or they might get loose.
Mm.
The funny
That
thing
doesn't
about
sound right.
that, they might get loose. The funny thing about that is that I think probably a lot of the people in the Syrian government, Syrian transitional government related organizations that are advancing upon these places probably know a few people inside. And
Well, that was my other question because, well, this is, again, I thought that a lot of ISIS fighters, or perhaps I should say ex-ISIS fighters, whatever that means. Although I feel like ISIS, in many ways, like the CIA, you never really truly leave ISIS.
yeah.
But my question is, I thought a lot of them were already being incorporated into like Jelani's forces.
I would say that there are probably there's two kinds of ISIS fighters. Let me say that. There's two kinds of ISIS fighters. There's a lot of guys that when ISIS came to town was like, I guess I'll join ISIS. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I'll be in ISIS for a little while. And then there's a lot of guys who are like, I love being in ISIS. We should fucking make ISIS everywhere, man. ISIS is awesome. Like, they were big ISIS. I mean, they were in ISIS, but they're also fans of ISIS. You know what I mean? Like they fuck with their own flow, I guess I should say. And so there are, I think there's probably, I'm going to be honest, I think there's probably ISIS fighters that are basically I don't know if there's any ISIS Druze, probably not, or ISIS Alawites, but like there's probably ISIS fighters and ex-ISIS fighters in the SDF. There's probably there's definitely ex-ISIS fighters within the Syrian Transitional Government Army. But there's also a hardcore of like real jihadists that I would say are mostly, or I would doubt that there's any in the STF and that they would all be in the STG. And so again, and there's probably people who were in ISIS at one point and then in HTS at other points,
Yeah. Okay.
It's a fluid place in many ways. And so there was a real fear that the STG would come and take over these camps and let everyone out. That there were breaks, and they have taken over Al Hol camp. There were breaks, but the U.S. sort of freaked out and started transporting prisoners to Iraq. Now, the question is if the U.S. can have done that the entire time, it's unclear why they just left all of these ISIS guys there.
Wait, but why is Iraq okay with that?
Well, that's who knows what the fuck is happening with there, because now, and this is getting, I'm sorry if anyone's confused.
Not a great situation between the U.S. and Iraq, too.
Well, no, because Maliki's about to come back in, and ISIS is returning, which means we're back in 2014.
It's eternal 2014.
It's eternal. Well, he was leaving in 2014, but yeah, it's eternal 2014. It is, I don't know what sort of deal is being worked out there. But speaking of deals, there have been a series of deals that have been attempted since that sort of breakdown with the Aleppo stuff between the SDF and the Syrian Transitional Government. So again, one of the sticking points in the original deal, or not one of the sticking points, one of the points in the original deal was the incorporation of the SDF as divisions or brigades or whatever unit of measurement within the Syrian army. This is actually the same offer, essentially, that the SDF had with Assad during negotiations there. I've talked to somebody, I followed those negotiations that the SDF did with Assad as close as I could. Talked to somebody who was involved as sort of a neutral party in those, and he said that the SDF were very stubborn, which is congruent with how I've how I perceive them as well. And they didn't really go anywhere. It seems that same thing happened here. They were too stubborn. It was like they wouldn't budge on anything. They're not great negotiators. Unfortunately, now their leverage has really changed because two big things have happened. One is they lost a significant amount of their tribal allies, including the Shamar tribe, some of whom I was actually attached to Shamar people for, my unit fought alongside Shamar people for a little while. And they lost American support. And that's the big one. And that is sort of
Question, sorry.
Yes,
do you
go
think
ahead.
the writing on the wall for that, or do you think that was like Trump coming in, you could see that coming a mile away, or you think that is like very much a product of the ongoing fluid situation since the collapse?
I think it's a product of I wouldn't have necessarily predicted that coming in. And I actually still don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's funny, a lot of Syrian rebel and now government supporters hated Brett McGurk because they perceived Brett McGurk as trying to get the SDF to make a deal with Assad. And they're more pro Tom Barak of the Epstein Files fame, who is the U.S. ambassador to Turkey.
Right.
Also the person that was received an email asking from Jeffrey Epstein, I think, a picture of him and a kid, and who is also the special envoy to Syria. He has been kind of overseeing these talks. He is very much more on the Syrian government side. He's like, the Kurds that's old news. We don't need that anymore. I'll say this. Obviously I have been against the U.S. presence in Syria since it has been in Syria. The presence now, the coalition, I think it's like the coalition against ISIS. The Syrian government is now part of that coalition. Is now officially part of that coalition. The YPG SDF never was because they're a non-state actor. Jelani was taken off the terror list. The PKK is still on the terror list. I don't even know if HTS was delisted, but HTS is sort of a non-entity now. It's the Syrian government. And so this is kind of like, we're actually seeing how things land here because the Syrian government is the government, and SDF, now the US is sort of being like, well, you're not the government, so we actually don't have to deal with you, and you have less people now. The only problem is that I guess there's the problems within the Pentagon because you'll never guess. Some of them are a little worried about working with groups that have maybe jihadists in it, which would be a first for the Pentagon. But Tom Barak is essentially, there's been various deals that have been attempted since in this past month. One is Muslim Abdi went to Damascus, and he was offered quite a different deal than the one they had been offered last year. It was SDF members can join the Syrian government as individuals, and they will add some Kurdish after school language programs, which the government has now announced, not enshrining their rights into the Constitution or any minority rights in the Constitution. I don't believe, maybe there are some, actually, I shouldn't say that, but not enshrining Kurdish rights into the Constitution. And it's just, and then essentially no sort of semi-federalization for the Northeast there. There has since been, then Abdi said no. People were like, oh, the PKK, like his masters in Kandil are telling him no. I don't know. He said no. And then there was another meeting, similar offer, also a no. And in that interim period, in this past month, there have been a ton of atrocities. At first, almost all of them were committed by the Syrian transitional government. There was a very famous one of a guy who had cut off a Kurdish woman's braid and was parading around and joking about it. There have been tons of just, I saw a video of a YPG member getting her head cut off, beheaded. This also, I think, brings to mind when the elements affiliated with the current Syrian government army invaded Afrin with the Turks and fought the YPG there. There and YPJ, there was a sort of a famous incident of a Syrian rebel fighter cutting off the breasts and genitals of a YPJ fighter on video. I think from their perspective, they're like, there are going to be sectarian massacres committed on Kurdish people, specifically Kurdish women, if the Syrian government army comes in and takes over. Whether that's done via force or whether that's done via sort of surrender of the SDF. I think that is essentially true. I think that is a real thing to be worried about. The other thing is now there has been a video that came out of what appears to be an SDF fighter who killed some Arab civilians, like 20 of them. And that has really inflamed a lot of tensions on the Syrian government side, a supporter side. I don't know if the government has actually made an official thing about it. They might have, I just haven't seen it. And I think a lot of people are sort of saying it's at the brink of becoming an ethnic conflict. And it always had tinges of that. But now it is, and to be fair, the SDF really did in some places try to make it a multi-ethnic governance. But I think if some people, if you're not really a fully committed Democrat or whatever, you might just go with if you're Sunni Arab, the Syrian government side might be a little more attractive to you right now. Especially because they seem to be holding all the cards. And so the SDF now have basically no cards to hold. They have no American support, or they don't have American direct support. They have lost most of their ISIS prisoners, and they've lost a ton of their allies and zones of control. And so they're essentially now in Kobani, where internet, water, electricity has been cut off for a while now, for like a week, and Hasaka and Kamishlo. Yeah, those are the other sort of two big cities there. And there is apparently a meeting happening right now with Abdi, and which is the leader of the SDF, and Shara, that's rumored to be happening right now, like literally as we're recording this. I don't know how it's turning out.
They extended the ceasefire, no?
Yeah, and I think it's like the Americans are pressuring both sides to extend the ceasefire because I think it would look really bad for the U.S. if there was large-scale massacres of Kurdish civilians or even fighters, really. And I think Shara knows that as well. And that doesn't stop that from happening in some places. But I don't know. I mean, it's also, I don't know how much control Shara really has over elements of the army. I mean, I think Syria's war was very decentralized on from the government or from the old government to the new government to the rebels to SDF, very decentralized in some time at points. And so it's unclear, but yeah, it's bad. And I think, I don't really know how the YPJ could have really. I think that there's points of things that the time they could have done things differently. I think they could have, people who say they could have signed a deal with the Russians. I don't know. I mean, the Russians didn't really, they kind of left Assad. After the Ukraine shit, like the Russians were so checked out of everywhere else that I don't think it would have mattered. And that was going to happen kind of no matter what. But the Americans, I think going along with them in that Deir ez-Zor shit, I think really was I've been saying this for years, was a bad mistake. And it's, I think, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I really, I hope for the least amount of bloodshed as possible, but it could be quite bad. It could be quite bad. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, these things are still developing. I'm talking to people there. I'm talking to people who know a lot of stuff, but it's really hard to get, insight into every little detail here. I hope I haven't got anything wrong, but it's a tough situation. I'll say that. And it's a country that has undergone a lot of fighting over the years, and I don't know whether people are sick of it or whether that just begets more. I have no idea, but it's a tough situation, especially for those who are in Kobani right now, because they really are under a pretty big siege. And then the ceasefire is essentially a ceasefire name only. It's basically no large scale battles, but there's still crazy, fighting going on. It's also really one of the first, I guess, large scale introductions of FPV drones that I've seen. I'm sure there've been others. And so in that way, sort of mirroring other wars. But yeah, it's a bad situation. Well, let's talk about something a little sunnier.
I was
Boy,
about to do a
Minneapolis.
really stupid joke of like, actually, it's quite cloudy there because of all the.
I think actually, yeah, because all the fucking snow. By the way, how have you been weathering the storm, Liz?
It's so cold out. There is so much
so
snow
cold.
around. I will send you photos of my
It's
front
so
yard.
cold.
It's shocking. And it's not going anywhere because it's gonna like still be frozen
Yeah,
for the like next 10 days.
I know.
So,
I know.
great.
I love winter. People who say they love winter, I'm always like, what is wrong with you? You say you love winter sometimes, and I've asked you what is wrong with you.
Winter pre-Christmas, darling, romantic.
3 weeks long.
Well, fair. But this during Christmas, where you get the cozy and the Christmas lights, and it still feels, a bit romantic outside, and you can kind of have it with the tree and like cozy inside. Great. I will say having the snowstorm over championship Sunday was not so bad. But then dealing with it afterwards has not been great.
I haven't loved it myself. Okay, so actually, before we start talking about Minneapolis, I want to talk about something that happened in October really quick, which was the shooting of a woman named Miramar Martinez in Chicago by an ICE officer. I think it was ICE. I don't think it was CBP. I think it was ICE. But that's not necessarily germane to this. So I think people heard about this at the time. It's kind of gotten a little bit out of the news now, but the story is basically she was tailing a car driven by a man in camo with a Lyft logo on it, which I find interesting, and no license plates.
Wait, I have a question. It had a Lyft logo on the car?
That's the reporting I've read has said that, yeah.
Maybe that's like what his gig was, or maybe he still has that gig.
Or maybe it's just like a car they took from somebody, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's maybe it had one of those little things like the stickers in it or whatever. So she realized that he was almost certainly a DHS officer of some kind. So she honked and followed him around for about 20 minutes until he got out of the car, pulled out his pistol and shot at her 7 times, hitting her 5 times. She lived. But while she was getting patched up, DHS released she drove herself to, I think, an auto garage, and then they got an ambulance. While this was all happening, she's like bleeding out. I don't know what the fuck the DHS guy is doing. Probably getting his story straight. They released a statement. DHS headquarters releases a statement calling her a domestic terrorist who ambushed federal agents. And then they later mentioned that she was carrying a firearm with the implication, obviously, what do you picture when that happens? When someone says something like that, right?
That it was like in their hand and they were like brandishing it or something.
Yeah, it was in the fucking car, completely legally stored, totally legal for her to carry it. Everything was absolutely legal there. The government story was that she was part of a caravan that was ramming his cars. She gets charged with assaulting federal officers. And then the government's case totally falls apart. First, it turns out that they send an officer's car to the East Coast, which is, it was part of a crime, apparently. But they send it like 1,000 miles away, where it gets fixed. So the story
fully detailed.
Yeah, fully detailed. Yep. And then footage comes out showing that the officer was not just rammed. If he had in the past, we don't know, but he certainly was not right before he stepped out. And we also find out that his partner is saying, like, do something, bitch, to Martinez. Like, because they're sort of near her in their cars.
Yeah.
And that happens right before the cop fires. And then text messages come out showing the officer who shot her bragging about how many shots he hit her with. So what we have here is the cops lying, deliberately lying and painting the person that they just shot as a domestic terrorist who was about to shoot them, even though that is just not borne out by the facts at all. They have them concealing evidence, and then they have them bragging about it. And I think that this is important because this is clearly, whatever playbook that they're operating by now, this is the one that this is it. This is it. This is the playbook.
What's funny is that I think for people that remember this story when it happened, that the second part of the story, which is the government's narrative completely falling apart, actually didn't stick with people. Like,
I know.
that was the thing that the government kind of like it had, everyone had sort of moved on in the news cycle, as is sort of the pattern. And, you know, what stuck with people was, oh, this person was following them, they got shot. Oh, this is like a terrible situation, but they were going after the ICE officers. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this was in October of last year. And that is kind of what stuck in the sort of like national narrative. That is different from what now we've seen over this past weekend in Minneapolis. And I think that breakdown of that playbook is really important.
Yeah, you know, it's this reminds me of a brilliant essay I read on the TrueAnon newsletter that we send out, that you wrote about sort of the narrative control that people jockey for right after these incidents happen, and like how that's really what matters. And I think you really hit on something there, because that is like one thing that people keep wondering, like, oh, how come they're not like releasing these sort of neutral statements, like letting an investigation play out? It's because they understand that like immediate narrative control is the number one thing that matters.
And yet some of that is now falling apart, which we'll get to. But let's walk through what's kind of happened in Minneapolis.
So Renee Good gets shot in the head, and then elsewhere, I guess, in the body. I think it's 4 times. And, you know, there's not much more to get into there. Obviously, the DHS immediately called her a domestic terrorist. I think one thing to note is that they are also attempting to, or were attempting to, I don't know if that's falling apart by now, charge her wife with something, who was there. 6 federal prosecutors in Minneapolis resigned over this. And could you read from this NBC article real quick?
Yeah. The attorneys had felt pressure from Justice Department leadership, both in Minneapolis and in Washington, to investigate any ties to activist groups by Good and her widow, said a law enforcement official with knowledge of their decisions. The official said the prosecutors were also concerned about a decision to cut out state and local authorities from the federal investigation. So 2 things to point out there. One, the ongoing tension between state and local authorities and the feds, specifically DHS and not just DOJ, is like a really key storyline here. But the second thing there, which I mean, I kind of want to just like talk about a little bit, is this idea of activist networks operating in these jurisdictions, I guess you would say. Like, there has been a ton of digital ink spilled trying to parse signal groups, Telegram groups, videos of what appears to me to be like Kirkland signature boxes of cheese crackers and potluck style lasagnas, looking for how could such Antifa groups be funded. There's clearly some sort of operation here.
Dude, it is.
But I think the important part is like, okay, it's one thing for like, you know, to make fun of kind of viral right-wing operator social media posts, but it's another for what NBC is reporting, right? For this to be also coming from the Justice Department.
Well, Kash Patel said on the Benny Johnson show yesterday, this is where the news is happening, ladies and gentlemen, on the Benny Johnson show yesterday, that because of reporting from Nick Sortor, follower of the podcast on Twitter, who is like a Cam Higbee type, I don't know, an independent journalist.
You need to go like one more, because I don't know who Cam Higbee is.
Cam Higbee is awesome. They're both, let me say this, they're both Pentagon reporters. You remember when they kicked like the press corps out of the Pentagon and just brought in
Pentagon
like
reporters.
Yeah, they brought in like minor or sometimes major Twitter influencers. They're people who have a career due to X's payout system with having a blue check and engagement. That's just what it is. People who are guests on like the Tim Pool show or whatever. This is like, they're from the Bongingo ecosystem.
Sure. Okay.
Which is
the greater Bongingo.
Yeah, they're from the Greater Bongingo Cash Patel extended universe. So
is he back? As in, is he back to his podcast?
yes, is he back to his? What do you think? What do you mean? He's back to being deputy director of the FBI? Why would he do
I
that?
don't know. We got to check in with Moink.
Moink.
We got to check it with Moink because we got to make sure they're getting their money's worth. So Cash Patel goes on to Benny Johnson's show. Benny Johnson, obviously, sort of a famous fairy, they might have called him in the popular magazines of the 1920s.
Feather-footed.
Yes. Light in the loafers, which now I know what it means. Now I know that it means you're not sneaking, which is what I used to think it meant.
6 years later.
But actually, no, maybe I thought it meant you were stupid or crazy. I don't know. Well, regardless, I was using it wrong. Anyway,
you thought it meant you were tired because you'd be like, when I get home from the factory, I'm feeling a little light in the loafers.
No, I know I didn't know it meant that.
Check
I know
the
I didn't.
transcript.
I know it wasn't
remember
that.
exactly
It
that's
wasn't.
what
you were
No,
coming
it
back
wasn't
from
that.
the dick sucking factory.
I was coming back from the actual factory. Yes, there was dick sucked there. What do you think we asked for in our contract? Anyways, he goes on the Benny Johnson Loafer show, and he's like, I saw these posts from Nick Sordor, and it appears that the operatives fighting ICE in Minneapolis have signal groups that are highly organized, and the FBI is now investigating them.
Right.
And I'm in touch with people who are part of these signal groups, and they tell me that there is they already got infiltrated by like all these right-wing people, and so it's a little, I think they're having to reconstitute themselves anyways. But an FBI, like, you have to remember, do you remember back in, I don't know when it was, but sometime last year, there was that Antifa conference at the White House?
Yes. Yeah,
where they brought in like Andy NGO and like all these other people to be like, Antifa is it's this transnational organized crime group that's blah, 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 blah. Obviously, if you spend any time on the organized left or even the unorganized left, but in person in the United States, in major cities, you know that like maybe in Portland, there's like a degree of organization, but in most places, there's like 5 or 6 anarchists or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, they'll do black box stuff, which used to be way more popular. I guess it's a little popular now, but it's a specific tactic, black box stuff. But there's not an Antifa network. That just isn't a thing. It does not exist. And a lot of those people, I'll say this, a lot of people do not like me, or at least used to not like me. I don't know how they feel now.
But also, like, they don't want a network.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this,
It's supposed to be decentralized.
They're painting with a broad brush here. So Antifa is kind of,
Well, I know.
what.
That's what it's also like whatever they want to call it. But it annoys me.
But as a result of that, they listed, I think, like 3 European Antifa groups on the terror list, and then said that they were going to go after and investigate like Soros and the Tides Foundation, because to them, Antifa means like anything that's funded by an NGO or whatever. So like bail funds, I guess, usually wouldn't be funded by NGO, but like I'm talking then about bail funds, about like immigrant groups, about anything that sort of does like activism. That is what they view as Antifa.
Like part of the greater, larger Antifa network.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because like if you are sort of a member of the left, which I'm not, by the way, I'm a Nazi essentially, but I mean, not a Nazi, but like
ISIS.
I'm like a combination of the two.
But not the fan of ISIS. You're just the guy
I'm not a fan of the Nazis either. I just am, it just is the only thing around where I live. But I'm a fair weather friend. I'll switch to anything as long as it comes through my town in boots, but not slippers. But no, if you are on the left, you understand that like some NGOs are all right, but like a lot of NGOs are actually in the final analysis a little bit our enemies. But to them, it's all the same thing. So they like group the left in with liberal because that's like in their sort of cosmography of this or geography of this. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. It's like all of these, like Soros has, literally George Soros and Alex Soros now has this like giant network made up of like progressive prosecutors, various like legal aid groups, the National Lawyers Guild, immigrant rights groups, and those are deployed in a centralized manner into hot zones to disrupt federal government operations.
Domestic hot zones.
Yes. Like they view it as like there's literally, I don't think I can stress enough how sort of conspiratorial
The
how
thing is that
mainstream this.
like obviously you can see the political use of this. Like
Yes.
cynically, it's like, okay, yeah, perfect. And this is a great way to sell a narrative. And look at all these people eating it up. The thing is that similar to how like Elon radicalized himself through like owning and like pushing all of the algorithmic gears to 10 or whatever
Mhm.
on X when he bought it and just like furthering his own psychosis. I genuinely believe that people within the administration, because of the like feedback loop that they've created with their base and the way that they have to appeal to their base through like narratives and policy decisions and the way that they speak to them with PR responses, they've similarly like gone through the like a further kind of radicalization loop where they actually believe their own bullshit
Yeah.
that they previously knew to be sort of like cynical tools. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, we see this in like Stephen Miller's, DHS's, and Kristi Noem's response to the Alex Pretti shooting, where they all came out and said the same thing.
Yes.
That this person was an assassin who had two whole magazines loaded full of bullets even, and assaulted federal agents with the intention of starting a massacre. And the implication is, if you have to actually look at the sort of thinking behind that, a lot of these people have lied so consistently because I'm going to be honest, like, again, as a balls and strikes person here, and I really am doing balls and strikes here, there is just not a domestic infrastructure of left-wing guerrilla direct action, whatever. There just is not a national one. It's just not there. There's nothing that resembles the Weather Underground. There's nothing, I mean, it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. But for these people, because literally they think that like Indivisible or whatever are communists, they have this kind of logic that leads them to seeing gun. And I think they know they're lying on some level. I do really do. I'm not trying to excuse them for that. But I think they both know they're lying and also think that they're telling the truth on another level, because to them, it is true, or at least to so much of their base, it is true. So it's Stephen Miller come out and be like, this guy was an assassin. This was an assassin's, maybe implication there sent by Antifa. Noam said the same thing, and Bovino said the same thing. I think this was a mistake.
It's funny because, to your point, so there was some reporting in Axios that said there was an email sent to congressional Republicans over the weekend where like the DHS communications director wrote, this is what they said. There was an incident between U.S. border, this is about the Pretti shooting, by the way. There was an incident between U.S. Border Patrol officers and an illegal alien with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. Like, so that is the story that they sent out to all Republican congressional leaders about like the official DHS stance on what happened, which is just completely made up.
I have to interrupt for a moment. Liz, you are such a fucking nerd that instead of saying semi-automatic handgun, you said semiotic handgun.
I did?
Yes.
What did I say?
Semiotic.
That's so funny.
That's when you used to assassinate Ferdinand de Saussure.
I was going to say, you were, Liz, you've been reading too many of these damn psychology books.
Oh, brother.
A semiotic handgun I think that would blow that agent's motherfucking brain.
Yeah, that was, kicked out of the psychoanalytic association back in like 1962. So.
But they're lying. And that's the crazy thing is they're lying, and they're not that good at it because, listen, this happened with the Renee Good thing. They were able to kind of cohere around the narrative of like Renee Good was actually, she did have a weapon. It's called a car. And I think a lot of people were like, I don't know, kind of looks like that ICE guy got in front of her car and then took out his gun and shot her 5 times or 4 times, whatever. And then they released that thing about he had internal bleeding, which is another word for a bruise, because if it was something worse, they would have said it was worse. But I think a lot of people were kind of willing to go along with that because you can at least adjust, like you could adjust that video or justify things in that video from that framework enough to like give you an excuse. Whereas this video is so sort of exculpatory to Pretti. And actually, it's just so obvious that it's just, everyone's seen the video. Everyone's seen all of the angles of the videos. And there's so many videos now of them just executing him. And groping, there's been some groping for like an excuse. They're sort of settling around now the Sig Sauer going off, which has been a big story in the gun world, going off on its own. And
that doesn't, it's so crazy to me because the video is Pretti already disarmed with his hands behind his back, being like pushed to the ground and then shot 10 times in the back.
Yes.
There's a zero reason, like even if a gun goes off, that's an execution. There's no way around that. And I think beyond just that video being very difficult for these sort of like other narratives to kind of fit, it coming in such quick succession after the Renee Good video has made it completely untenable, as we'll talk about, because more and more normie voters, people who I think were in 2024 more amenable to some of Trump's immigration stances, have since been like, wait, what the fuck is going on?
Yes.
You know?
And I think that the immediate sort of barrage of lies and smears of calling this guy a domestic terrorist, a would-be assassin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that might play well with like antisocial right-wing personalities on Twitter.
Yes. Which is what they thought they could get away with.
I think that they think they're getting away. It's just like the penguin shit. You know what I mean?
Well, I would remind, do you remember Vance after they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats situation, where he came out and he said, when people are like, wait, what the fuck are you talking about? He doubled down, remember? And he was like, this is what he said: if I have to create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do. And you see all of that through Vance. Other people besides him, but that is the posture of the administration.
Yes.
Up until this point, because now there's been, it seems, significant pushback.
Bovino, we hardly knew ye. It's so sad. Just as we were really getting acquainted with this amazing new character. Because that's the thing, is like Trump 2 has brought back not all the greatest hits from, they didn't bring back Michael Flynn, for instance, we love. But they brought back some of the hits from the first administration, and they've added some new star players. Bovino was set to be an amazing character in Trump world. He has been made. He was the commander of El Centro, but he was just basically a district commander or whatever from the Border Patrol. He was made commander of ops at large, which is a position they made up for him. And
I love that. Wait, can we just pause? Because it just, whenever someone was named like editor at large, everyone would always be like, what is that? What is this kind of title?
What is an editor at large?
No one ever knew.
Does that just mean you're friends with the guy
director
who owns?
at large.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's so funny to see DHS like use that language as if it's like some sort of editorial board, commander at large.
Well, and
that's not a title.
They put him in the goofy coat.
Also, he's tiny at large.
Well, I don't know.
That's unfair to him.
I might have to get some sartorial advice on this here from our producer, because my view has been, if you're little,
don't do the floor length.
Floor length is hard because they see how close your head is to the floor.
No, proportionally.
They see your head and then they see the floor, and then they see there's so little distance betwixt the two
Yeah.
that it makes you look shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because most modern coats are too short. You see a lot of men wearing overcoats that are above the knee, and it looks bad.
Yes.
But you can go too far. The pendulum swings the other way too far. If it's brushing the floor, then it's too long, and it exaggerates how tiny you are. So you want the coat to end below the knee, but not quite at the ankle.
No, you
with
need a like
rare
mid calf
exceptions. Yeah.
Well, my advice for
or a little
Bovino
higher.
would be to set up vantage points throughout any terrain that he has to go through, and to wear Nike Air Max Pros in a really short jacket, but that is tailored like it's a long
do they
jacket.
Actually, pause. Do they really? Do they recommend the Air Max Pro? Because it is kind of crazy. Those
They do recommend the Air
legit
Max
do
Pro.
have like little lifts in them.
So Liz, you know how I was like having a problems with my
That's
relationship with
so
Christina
funny.
Hendricks
Uh huh.
because
Because
of
of
my
the.
height?
Oh, okay.
Once I started hooping more,
Mm.
I got the Nike Air Max Pros. It's
I
been
don't think
smooth sailing
anyone's
ever
hooping
since.
in those.
Yeah, taking around in them Chinese balloons. But he's very short. People are like, oh, he looks like he's in the SS. I gotta tell you, I gotta make a confession on the show right now. 2 years ago, for my birthday, my father proffered me with a gift unlike any that I have ever been proffered before.
Was this the 2-piece, or did the other part of the outfit come earlier?
No, they came at the same time.
Okay.
My dad gave me one floor-length leather trench coat, and I got to be honest, it does flood a bit. I'm not tall enough for this trench coat. It's a very long coat.
You definitely need the Air Maxes with it.
I need the Air Maxes with it. And at the same time, he also purchased me a Kangol hat.
Also leather, no?
No. Oh, God, I wish. Oh, God, I
thought
wish.
it was also leather.
I've only put it on once momentarily, but I haven't gotten rid of it because I feel guilty, even though my dad will listen to this episode. So, well, whatever. Dad, I still have the hat. I still have the Kangol. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do a Kangol.
Wait, do you not have the jacket?
Oh, I definitely still have the jacket.
Oh, okay. The thing is it's not like matrix coated. I want to describe the jacket a little bit.
It brings to mind the Schutzstaffel.
Yeah.
But also I would say
like, with a little
Soviet.
funk.
It's a little Soviet too, but it's also a little bit, because it's got a very wide lapel.
Yes. But that's where it's kind of getting a little funky.
Yeah, it gets a little funky. I don't know if I can incorporate this into a fully. I wore it one time, and that was.
You could be Bovino for Halloween.
I dressed as Shaft for Halloween, and I did wear it then. What? What's the problem? I didn't do the makeup. I got that tint naturally. No, but I did dress as Shaft for Halloween a couple years ago, and I did. So I guess it was right after my birthday, and I did wear the jacket. But maybe I'll bring it back. Maybe I'll send it to Bovino. Actually, it would make Bovino would drown in it.
Yeah.
Anyways, he is sort of very theatrical, and he's kind of got this little whatever fucking haircut, and he has been giving these daily press briefings. And he's been very active on Twitter in the replies.
Very active on Twitter.
Yes. He follows like every Nazi account, by the way. But he also follows every woman that ever replies to him with anything remotely positive.
I should have done that before I know. Spoiler, he got shut down. His Twitter got shut down.
Well, I will say, I did learn from an article that came out today in American Prospect by Daniel Boguslaw that his passwords got leaked. And one of them was a variation on the word red bone, which I found quite shocking.
Okay.
Yeah. It does make the Sean Penn, One Battle After Another comparison.
I mean, it's a little too much.
It's a little too much. Bovino has come out defending...
Also, I do think, just for simulation theory watchers, the name Bovino feels like a little too...
It's one of those things where I almost want to shut you down right now. It's hard for me to talk about that.
You know what I'm saying?
Bovino?
How can that be his fucking name?
Well, obviously there's a cow somewhere back there, you know?
How can that be his name?
Dude, I think he's fucking. I don't know, man.
If
I
you're
don't know.
named that, is this just what you become?
They shouldn't let you into cities if you got a name like that.
It's tough.
We remember what happened to Chicago with the fire. We don't need you here.
And yet Barry Weiss gets a job at CBS.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and also it's a little too like Bongingo as well. Like there's a little too much.
No, but
going on there.
Bongingo, clearly a clown. Bovino, I don't know. A clown
Listen,
of a
there's somewhat
different kind.
pastoral about the name.
Anyway, we're getting off topic.
He has been. So it was also, to be clear, it was Border Patrol officers, which have been deployed to Minneapolis under Bovino. They're like, we're bringing in the big guns. They're bringing in BORTAC, which is like their assault teams. They have a couple, I think, but they're bringing in BORTAC, and they're bringing in Bovino and his just like in his thugs, his thug squad, to supplement ICE. And it was Border Patrol officers that shot Alex Pretti.
Yeah.
And then Bovino, who came out, and I think Bovino was the first to say Pretti was an assassin. But he came out hard. He's been, arguing for his officers on Twitter. He said that he would not name the officer involved in the shooting or the officers involved in the shooting because that would be doxing. Which it just is.
We just keep on using that, don't we?
I could not believe it. It's just like the federal government will no longer name their agents who kill American citizens in an unjustified shooting because that would resemble what you would do during Gamergate. I mean, that's been the whole thing with these DHS fucking people in the first place is they wear the mask because, their families would be harassed. Their families would be threatened.
I do think that would happen.
I don't give a fuck. You signed up.
I'm not saying
I'm sorry. It's a fucking...
I want to talk about that, though, because I also think... Whatever, we'll get to this later. But I do think that is why it's such an important ask that you get the masks off these guys. I think you would see a shocking number of resignations. I genuinely do.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also a real psychological aspect of wearing a mask when you sort of conduct these operations.
Yeah, no shit.
And there's a reason they make executioners wear hoods. You know what I'm saying?
And
or they used to.
Yes. And these guys who are fucking like prattling off whatever internal like monologues of whatever fucking dumbass video game that they think they're in.
Yeah.
And they don't even have to like have their face shown. They can just like fully inhabit whatever fantasy as their like, I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's too much. It's too much.
Well, they're sending him back to El Centro. I don't know if he's any longer the commander of ops at large, but he is being removed from Minneapolis. He's being sunsetted. He's being sunsetted. I read in one of the articles, there's a bunch about this now, that he was thinking of retiring soon, which is, I'm like, okay, yeah, he's been thinking of that in the past 5 hours.
Yeah. Well, soon is relative, I suppose.
But they're putting Bovino out to pasture, which is interesting because I believe there were other plans for him. Because now Kristi Noem and her paramour Corey Lewandowski are in trouble. So
I want to say real quick, did you see that Fetterman came out and demanded the resignation of Kristi Noem?
Really?
Yes.
He's awesome. He's fucking, I'm sorry. Because that's the thing is like the left needs a guy who speaks plain people's language.
I'm just almost shocked that he did. But he did come out and say that.
Maybe he's like, I want to have lunch with her. You know? I think he's just like, she's under a lot of mental pressure. We need to give her a break.
In front of Congress. She is being summoned.
By Rand Paul, no less, right?
Yes. And there will be congressional hearings. We'll get into that. But I think the fascinating thing with Kristi Noem. Don't make me fucking do this.
So this is the thing. Let me get on it. Let me throw my body in front of you like a Secret Service agent and take the bullet and say this. If your name is Kirsten or Kristen or Kiersey or whatever, we don't fucking know the difference. I see K's, I see I's, I see Y's, I see R's, I see S's, I see T's. It is a jumble of letters for me. I don't have the sort of failures that leads one to develop organically a type of dyslexia that many of you might have. I actually have. I've been told that I have a brain that they could have made in a lab. It's so perfect. My one Achilles heel, and Liz shares this as well, is with the K's and the R's and the I's and the S's, we don't know. And so TrueAnon House style is, if you have one of these quite modern names, because names like this, both male and female versions, are quite popular these days, we do not tell the difference. And it's not saying we cannot tell the difference, because with study of years, I'm sure we could, but we do not tell the difference because it's hard for us. And so Kirsty Gnome, Christy Gnome, she is all of these. The thing you have to pay attention to is the gnome part, which is also true in many fantasy settings.
Anyway, Ms. Gnome.
Mm-hmm.
So Ms. Gnome, it's known, has been working quite closely with Corey Lewandowski since at least 2019, 2020.
So I want to interrupt. I'm sorry. I need to interrupt. It's Mrs. Gnome. She's married to a guy named, I believe, Brian. Yeah, Brian with a Y. Her husband is named Brian Gnome. So it's not Mrs. Gnome. It's the married to Brian, Mrs. Gnome.
Now, isn't Corey also married?
Corey is also married, but who gives a fuck?
But Corey is a Trump 1 character.
He's he's a Trump 1 campaign character.
So people might remember him, although he did get kind of pushed out of Trump world.
Yeah.
They have been having an affair since at least 2021. She is the head of DHS. I want to walk through some of this about her because I found some of this stuff fascinating. She's the head of DHS. He is kind of an unofficial, I don't know, right-hand man for her within the organization. She was, prior to this, kind of like small town Dumbo in South Dakota politics. She was like handpicked by Tom Daschle and then just kind of like rode the Republican wave. She is not, I would say, an ideologically committed person. In fact, like a lot of reporters have just called her stupid. I don't believe that to be just straight misogyny when they're doing that. I think that genuinely, like, it seems that she's very Trump-like in the sense that, like, the last person that talks to her, she's like, let's do that.
Yes.
She doesn't really seem to be super committed to any kind of, like, real conservative values or Republican values or even MAGA values. Like, she's just, like, ready to go along to get along.
She's having a long-term affair with a fucking Polak. I'm so sorry. I totally forgot. She's having a long-term affair with somebody of Polish persuasion.
Okay. New York Magazine said that she had reality star energy, which I do kind of like. And I want to kind of like, you know, I can't really stop thinking about that. There was, do you remember when she did that video in front of the Sikot prisoners?
Yep, just like Nick Shirley did.
And she was wearing a $50,000 Rolex in that video.
Interesting.
Like, she knows what she also, just like a couple things, she greenlit a close to $1.5 million anti-drug campaign with the slogan, "Meth, we're on it."
In Dakota?
Yes.
Or whatever?
That apparently she came up with.
It's a pretty good slogan. Meth, we're on it. Meth, we're on it. It's good. It's good. I mean, there's probably statistically a lot of people that read that and were like, the government is
on my side,
speaking my truth.
I am the government.
Yeah.
And the government is me. She also, do you remember when she lied about meeting Kim Jong-un?
No.
Yes. And then like doubled down on it. Anyway.
Did she just think it was another...
No, she just lied about it in her book. I think it was in her book. And then she...
Oh, yeah.
And then when people were like, wait, when did that happen? And she was just like...
You wouldn't know about it. That's the same book, of course. You talk about killing her dog.
Yes.
Blah, 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 blah.
Cricket. Yeah, I'll mention that in a second. So according to New York Magazine, this is what they said about their relationship. Lewandowski is not only surreptitiously co-leading DHS without congressional approval, but has brought Trump world's maniacally pugnacious style to the department and drawn out some of Noam's own pugnacious predilections too.
I don't know if I would have used pugnacious the first time in that sentence.
I don't think I would use it twice.
No, well, that's what I'm saying. It's tough. Little TrueAnon style tip here. You want to use it if you got a 50-cent word, use it one time.
But also, is pugnacious really what we're going with there?
I think that's pugnacious.
Anyway, this is also what they had. This is what Frank Luntz had to say about her, which I think is so nuts and completely contrary to what we've seen in this past week, which is she's probably the administration's best spokeswoman. The only thing that bothers me is that her name is not mentioned as a potential 2028 Republican Party leader. She's underestimated.
Nope, not happening.
No.
Not happening. Not in a million years.
In fact,
not in
I would be.
years.
Well, let's see if she survives this. She might.
Let's see if she's still in fucking office by the time this fucking show comes out.
So Noam and Lewandowski met in 2019 on a Foster's Freeze deep sea fishing trip.
Okay, Foster's Freeze, but do you mean Foster Freus?
I know,
but we do call him house style. We call him Foster
That's
Freeze.
That's what we call him.
Obviously, we love the Berkeley Foster Freeze.
Yeah, so just like on some big, conservative, like stupid fundraising thing. She was already governor at the South Dakota at the time. He had already been pushed out from Trump 1. They totally hit it off. She ends up bringing him on as an advisor, quote unquote advisor. He starts handling like all of her kind of media facing stuff, which is like bookings, events, whatever. Mm-hmm. Starts to kind of like build up her profile. I mean, I will say this about Lewandowski, like he's a mover and shaker.
He is. Yeah. I mean, that was the whole thing during Trump 1 is that he kind of like retired from politics to become an unofficial lobbyist who never registered as a lobbyist.
Right.
And so he's just like, I can open doors for you. I mean, he would sell his like services to companies or whatever. And he just gave them advice on how to deal with Trump in the public.
Now, people forget this, but she was on the short list for VP. And she was like really rumored to be at the top of that list. But apparently one of the reasons she wasn't selected was because of the rumors of her affair with Lewandowski. There's like, at one point, Trump even like calls her, I mean, all of this is very out in the open too, about the two of them. Trump like refers to her as Corey's girlfriend. But the thing that really kills the whole VP thing was that she killed her dog.
Okay.
Like when that comes out and everyone's sort of like reacting to it and then her... Remember how she tried to say Face or whatever? It was like on Face the Nation or something like that. And it was like,
she was like, I also
worse. Fucked it. No. Anyway, instead, Lewandowski is the one that ended up pushing for her at DHS.
Yeah.
So he was able to, at the time, recruit Tom Homan to really like back her, which is interesting.
Interesting.
Yes, considering the current dynamics, which we'll talk about. And Trump approaches her, asks her what she wants, and she's like, I want Homeland Security. She gets approved, confirmed, like easy. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think it was funny because I feel like Alyssa Slotkin did a whole like, Sermon from the Mount after the fucking like murder this weekend. And she fucking voted to approve her. So I was like, whatever. Anyway, Lewandowski wanted to be the her chief of staff at DHS. That was kind of like the deal that they imagined.
That's so progressive.
It is. But that all fell apart because everyone knew they were having an affair.
Okay.
He was also hit with an unwanted sexual contact case it was like he like tried to grope someone. I don't really remember the details of it.
You're telling me that a right-wing person from Trump world groped a woman?
He had to like settle. It was like settled.
I think it was in Vegas that it took place too. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was in Vegas.
And then there was all of the like he wouldn't register taking unreported foreign money stuff. So he got flagged for all this like internal background stuff. Anyway, so she keeps him on as special government employee. We talked about that funny status because remember that was what Elon's status was.
Yeah.
That technically has a 130-day limit. Now, Lewandowski has like skirted this by literally avoiding swiping in and out.
Genius.
So he like goes around, this is from reporting, he like goes around and like brags that like he's only worked 69 days.
And he's like jumping the turnstile at DHS or whatever so he doesn't swipe in.
No, but like, dude, literally he uses 60.
I know.
He says it on purpose.
Well, it's on so did Elon, you know?
But
it's
this is like, this is like, dog, this is our government. No shit, we're all dying.
Yeah. No shit, we're all on meth.
So I want to just like, I was curious. So I was like doing a little bit of research on the very commented upon changes to Mrs. Noam's appearance over the years, which whomst amongst us hasn't enjoyed a glow up.
Yeah, the swag method or anything.
I will say this. It definitely I think I don't want to imply, look, correlation is not causation.
Yes, it is.
However, it is after she meets Corey that she starts getting filler.
So I'm going to say this.
It's not just the haircuts and it's not just the change of makeup. I'm talking cheek filler to start. And I'm going to say her chin.
I don't abide by this strategy anymore, but I know that this strategy works and I currently use it always. If you're in a relationship with a woman, you have to start needling her about her appearance. You just have to. And so she comes home and, she's a bit frazzled from a day of work and say, you look like shit. Why don't you look nicer for me? You wake up in the morning and say, ooh, wow, maybe go to sleep with a little bit of makeup on once in a while. And then you start asking her, can you make things bigger? And you start with the lips. Easy to do. Maybe a little bit of cheek too. And then say, when you are cross with me, ma'am, I don't like the way that you furrow your eyebrows because you look like the evil baby from The Simpsons. Why don't you put some fucking shit in there that makes it so you can't make expressions anymore? And then how about this? We need a fucking Trump world person with a BBL.
No, that's like, that I can't. That's too powerful. That's too crazy.
So you think that Corey is just like, I need you to look better?
I do.
Yeah.
I actually
can
think
see
that. I think that he was like, if we're going to increase your national presence, fucking let's plump those lips. She does like, it's 2024 that she gets the full kind of like famous Mar-a-Lago face, which is basically her face now. But she does like, she publicizes her own veneers in 2025, which was really funny. She like tried to get ahead of it, I think, because I think people often don't realize how veneers genuinely do change the way you look.
Yeah.
Like so much, and especially her. Anyway, it's my opinion that yes, I do believe that he had a hand in all of this. I'm just saying.
Well, she looks amazing. Although she does have a touch of the seal about her. And I don't mean the animal, I mean the person. Her cheeks look a bit pitted whenever I see her.
I know.
Perhaps it's just the light.
Corey doesn't know about all the things you can do about that, which is a shame.
So, despite Homan's help with Lewandowski
that sounds like a sitcom from the 80s. Homan's help?
Yeah, there have been some problems internally at DHS, you'd be shocked to know, between factions that have sort of appeared and cohered and solidified in the past year. So this is coming from the Washington Examiner, which is a right-wing paper. It's not a super far right paper, but it's a right-wing paper, although I do think it often has pretty good stuff about the internal workings of the administration.
It's kind of like like tabloid-ish too, which is fun.
Yes, definitely. Would you read this out?
Exclusive. Senior Trump administration officials, including a cabinet member, tried to force out President Donald Trump's top border official over disagreements about how to reach the president's deportation goals and ethical concerns. 8 sources alleged during conversations with the Washington Examiner, and yet none of them could be named. Those involved said Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski, a special government employee at DHS and Noem's close ally, have waged an aggressive campaign to make U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Rodney Scott so uncomfortable at work that he would resign. I do think it's funny. They're going to, we're going to go on and talk about this, but if you just didn't read any more, it sounds like they're just like doing the like annoying someone to death move.
Yes. Well, they kind
Um,
of are doing that.
Which is true and unapproved, by the way.
Yes, they are literally, they're annoying him to death.
Yeah.
So they're talking about Rodney Scott, who's the actual commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. That is his job. He is like, I think a lot of people might think it's Greg Bovino.
It's
No,
not.
Greg Bovino does not have, it's a fake job that they made up so he can go on TV. The actual guy who is in charge of that is a guy named Rodney Scott, who's like a longtime Customs and Border Protection guy. I think he was in Georgia Border Patrol in like 92 or something like that. So the article goes on to say that at points, Lewandowski would order Scott around and Scott would be like, you don't work here, man. Like you can't, it's been 180 days. Like you can't order me around. At which point I assume Lewandowski would say, 69 days, my brother, read the fucking slip. But that caused tensions because Lewandowski is in there sort of swinging his dick around. Scott, who's like a career kind of bureaucrat guy, was up until a certain point, is like, you can't order me around. You can't do this kind of stuff. The article also claims that Noam sees Tom Homan, and Scott as threats because they carry institutional credibility that doesn't depend on proximity to power or press.
Girl, you don't need to lean on him.
Yes. Well, I think the real fissure is this. I think that it's Noam, Lewandowski, and Bovino are sort of doing this like TV show
Yes.
for Trump, whereas Homan and Scott are like, we're doing this like we've always done, but we're finally kind of able to do our job now. We don't have those fucking Democrats breathing down our necks. And so they're a little more focused, I guess, on DHS's mission. And I'm not trying to make them sound like good guys or anything like this. I'm just
No.
this is just how they're being portrayed. Whereas Noam and Lewandowski and Bovino are sort of focused on things like the flashy raid in Chicago and that apartment building and like the videos.
Yeah, I mean, they genuinely are operating or creating like cruelty theater for the terminally online who hate libtards, who will say the party depends on for election juice, especially with the midterms looming.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to balance because Homan and Scott probably, well, that's not really, it's more Homan's job than Scott, but they probably have actionable plans to deport more immigrants than Lewandowski and Noam do, but it doesn't necessarily lend itself to as good of TV. And so it's interesting because you'll see, I think that there's this weird tension in the MAGA camp of people being mad enough that the flashy raids aren't deporting enough people, but they want the flashy raids to happen. And it's sort of like, it's kind of everybody like this very rabid anti-immigrant base wanting something that's maybe a little impossible, which is huge numbers of deportations, but also we need like hype videos for it. And we need like maximum media exposure.
Well, I think the other thing is that, you know, a lot of these career guys know that like political backlash is the way to get all of what they're trying to do shut down.
Yes.
Whereas Lewandowski, Noam, other parts of the administration, specifically Stephen Miller, who somehow people are not like focusing their ire, by the way.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, get him out of there too.
Yeah.
And Vance, right? They're all doubling down on like any objections to what we're doing are illegitimate in the first instance, basically.
Yeah, and I think that there's another factor here, which is that Miller very openly wants to fight his political enemies using the vehicle of DHS.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is beyond any doubt now that DHS has been transformed into a fully sort of, not fully, but partially realized political police in many ways. And that is how Miller is also obviously very, 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 he hates immigrants. I don't think he'd dispute that. He hates immigrants.
Not even immigrants, just like anyone who's not white.
Yeah. Thank God he's a fucking Jew. Jesus Christ. But I'd say that very selfishly. There's that factor as well, because like that is also kind of hard to Like that transforms, like whereas Homan and Scott's maybe more bureaucratic, obviously very political, but bureaucratic mission would be derailed by transforming ICE and CBP into organizations in large part that are supposed to be dealing with internal political enemies as opposed to immigrants.
Yeah.
So the Examiner article goes on to say, in an internal memo obtained by the Washington Examiner, Scott told senior officials across the agency in December, this was last December, about his new deputy, whom the DHS had selected for him. The new appointee was Joseph Mazzara, previously special counsel to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who Noam later tapped to serve as acting general counsel at DHS headquarters. All matters were now to go through Scott's deputy commissioner rather than him, sources said the DHS told Scott. So the article goes on to show that the CBP mid-ranks have been filled essentially with like political appointees by Kristi Noem, which essentially act as like acting upper ranks there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, that's like someone like Bovino or something like that, but also in the bureaucratic structure. So they've essentially created a parallel bureaucratic structure within CBP.
Almost like a Soviet of some kind.
Yes. So there's detail after detail of them trying to get Scott to quit by annoying him so that they can replace him. And the person they want to replace him with, and this has been reported throughout last year, throughout the last part of last year, but is really made clear in this Washington Examiner article. The person that they want to be the new CBP chief to replace Scott is the one and only Greg Bovino.
Well, that's been completely derailed.
I don't know. I mean, there's an interesting thing. Like, I think there is a internal war happening right now. This is what I'm hearing, at least within the Trump administration, as to their. I think this is getting them. I think this is a problem internally for them.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. I mean, because it is derailing like one of their signature issues.
Yes.
Which, like, I think it's worth mentioning that it's not just within the Trump administration, but like the Republicans are really struggling with this as well, which is pressuring the administration to kind of deal with this. And it's funny because Trump's response to this incident versus Renee Goods he was very much more, we're trying to investigate what happened, much more like wishy-washy. Whereas with Renee Good, after her shooting, he was like, "Can you believe that she was like trying to run over our officer?" So
yeah.
He, I think, and whoever is around him can see some of the political writing on the wall, which is like, this is not going the way you think it is among like the larger American public, specifically people who used to be on your side.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that a little bit more, but I also want to mention some of the stuff with Democrats because, again, the response to this has been different than the shooting of Renee Good, where the Democrats now are threatening to shut down the government and are saying that they want to, basically shut down the government over the appropriations bill that the Senate is voting on now, which would fully fund DHS through the year.
Yeah.
Something I think that is important to mention is that, like, the thing with Noam and Lewandowski is that them operating as a unit coincided with DHS getting this like huge amount of money with the passage of the OBA. The one big,
beautiful bill.
Just going to call it the OBA.
I mean, they were getting funded. They were getting more money than I believe the Marine Corps.
Yeah, it set aside $190 billion in additional funding for DHS through 2029. So totally discretionary, very few restrictions. That included $75 billion for ICE alone, because obviously there's other departments within DHS, and another $66 billion for CBP. So that is not what is being debated in Congress right now, right? what's being debated in Congress right now is the annual budget
Mhm.
for entire DHS, which, you know, DHS annual budget, I think, is like $64 billion, which is also
Yeah.
like putting that in perspective.
Yeah.
So, you know, kind of putting that together, in addition to the $64 billion, the OBA gave ICE like a $75 billion slush fund that they can use no matter what, even if the annual budget gets frozen. Which is why I think that Democrats are really focusing on, I mean, some Democrats, we don't know how this is going to go, but they're focusing on these restrictions that they can kind of impose on appropriations, which all sound very reasonable to me. I don't know. I know I'm like Lib Franzak now, but what they're asking for is that to like cooperate with state probes and send CBP back to the border. So not to let them operate internally.
Yeah.
And then they're demanding body cams, which I know everyone knows, whatever. Everyone knows
Whatever.
that a lot of that is reform theater, but body cams and no face masks. That to me
Yeah.
seems
No face mask would be good.
really big. They also are asking agents to be limited by use of force standards. And I just want to say it's so fucking crazy that they're not.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Well, it's really unclear like what standards that they are limited by.
I don't know
Like,
if they have
I mean,
any.
Miller said that they had total federal immunity.
That's not a thing.
which
No.
it's not a thing. Yeah, it's. I mean, but it's him trying to essentially incite them to do maximum damage. You know, I think the Democrats are kind of in a bind. Democrats have a tough go with immigration stuff, and I think there's a sort of funny but kind of correct right-wing critique about Democrats' relationship to immigration, because I think as a lot of the kind of NGO staffer set became much more liberal during the woke era, I guess you could
Mhm.
say, one of the, big canards with that, I think I'm using the word canard correctly. If I'm not, I'm not, but you know what I mean, was not necessarily open borders. I don't think anyone would say that, but like basically no immigration restriction. Or not no immigration restriction, I shouldn't say that, but much laxer immigration restriction. This sort of clashes with what the Democrats believe, which is in a capitalist, liberal democracy, which is there's not been one in history that has had no borders. And I'm saying this not to be like I'm a completely I'm a fucking immigration restrictions or anything like that. I'm not saying my opinion here at all. I'm just saying there's some contradictions within the Democratic coalition about this that I think you really saw come out during the Biden era, where they were kind of just paralyzed on it and didn't really know what to do. And it's interesting because it's like just like you saw some Democrat politicians who are fairly mainstream, maybe liberal Democrats or maybe moderate Democrats in other ways, kind of become like abolish the police or defund the police people. I guess mostly defund the police people in 2020. You saw some of them sort of go to these positions that aren't really congruent with their other positions on immigration during the Biden presidency. And it's kind of got them into a mess where there isn't really a coherent Democrat plan for immigration.
Yeah.
And if Europe serves as any sort of guide for us, what tends to happen, and I've talked about this on the show before, is that right-wing positions or parties will grow quite popular, oftentimes based around immigration, which is frankly not very popular with large parts of the population. And then in a effort to stave off the popularity of those right-wing ideas or parties, a liberal party or centrist party or whatever, or left-wing party in some cases, will adopt a restrictionist platform when it comes to immigration. And I think that is probably, weirdly enough, going to be eventually the end result of this here.
Well, I think that like it's funny because the White House is sort of operating in a flip version of this a little bit,
Yeah.
which is like, I mean, we've been talking about this like for years with these guys, but I think everyone recognizes that like their obsession with social media is like a guiding force of policymaking and like
Yeah.
response. And they're extremely influenced or captured. Maybe that's a better term, by the forces that they see kind of guiding the media online, which I think, people can argue was similar to how a lot of mainstream Dems operated in the Biden years, right? Kind of what you're talking about.
If we take the Iglesian analysis of the groups capturing the Democratic
Right.
Party and apply it to the Republicans, it would be the
group
posters.
chats. Oh.
Yeah, the group chats. Yeah, no, that's a much. No, you're a genius. It's the group chats. Yeah.
But I do think that it's funny because in this moment, this is different, right?
Yes.
Like, it seems to me that now they look like, and you see it from the silence now coming from people like Vance and Miller, by the way, which I'm sure was a directive after that disastrous press conference.
Mm-hmm.
But they seem genuinely out of touch with normies who find this shit rightfully horrifying, And,
Yeah.
to kind of circle this back to immigration, like that was one of Trump's strongest issues. Obviously, I think everyone knows that. And one of the main things that got him elected. And just like balls and strikes, right? Looking at the numbers, the New York Times has him polling at like -18 now on immigration, when he was just -6 in September. So it's like a 12-point drop in 4 months. Now, I think the question is, what image do people have in their head when they think immigration? Is it Somali daycares? Is it Haitians eating cats? Is it Venezuelan rape gangs? Is it caravans of migrants in South Texas? Like,
Forgot about the caravans.
you forgot about that, right? But that was like the big image, that and the Colorado apartment complexes. Like, defining images. And the admin has done so much work to get those images to stick. And they're very good at it. But now what I see, and I think what a lot of other people are seeing, is that what people are associating with immigration, not even just ICE, but like with immigration, is federal officers shooting a mom in the face and calling her a fucking bitch.
Yeah.
And a regular guy getting shot 10 times in the back after being tackled and disarmed. Like, that's what people are seeing now. And it's funny because in the last, less than, I think just like last week, everyone is kind of shocked now. Abolish ICE, shout out Sean McElwee, is, now polling pretty well, which is crazy. It was a career ender. Yeah. I mean, you bring up defund the police, right? It's a similar thing. It's associated with like lefty decadence of the early 2020s.
Yeah.
And, just September 2024, Abolish ICE was opposed by 66%, right? Only had 20% support. January, YouGov, and this is prior to the Pretti shooting. January, YouGov has public support of Abolish ICE going 46% to 43%. That's crazy, with independents favoring getting rid of the agency entirely by 12 points. So there's basically been a net 50-point move on abolishing ICE, which was a position that was previously seen as electoral suicide. This is fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, from a ball and striking perspective, I should say, it's crazy that that's happening. Now, do I think that they're going to abolish ICE or whatever? I mean, I could see a world where INS makes a roaring comeback.
Well, yeah. It's just, the thing is not, if this is like predicting anything, and more so that this is not normal. Like, moving 50 points on a single issue in less than a year is not normal.
Yes.
And I've seen some other pollsters compare it to Abu Ghraib and the Tet Offensive in terms of quote unquote events that shifted polling significantly, right? And that these being moments where they're so publicly widespread and so publicly consumed, the images stick, and everyone is very much on the same page about what they are seeing and horrified, that it completely flips policy.
Which is interesting to contrast that with a lot of the talk from right-wing influencers online.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, there's a lot of, they all talk about panicins and these sort of things, but
Fucking. By the way, it's just sweet panicking. And I'm fine with that.
I'm never panicking. I'm always, look at this hand, completely steady, wrapped around my penis. But it's interesting. It's been interesting to see like these people sort of dig in their heels and be like, "This is what we voted for. I voted for a woman getting shot in the face. I voted for this." Like
I do think they
sort
did.
of, what do people call it? Vice signaling. I think that they did too.
Yeah.
But like, I think there is a limit to vice signaling.
Yeah.
Just like there was a limit to virtue signaling. I think there is a limit to vice signaling. And I think it is a poor strategy for a lot of the online kind of Trump boosters or personalities sort of associated with that realm to push that. Because A, they're quite right. The administration is watching that stuff and they are also kind of fooled by it. And that they think that like, oh, some 75,000 like thing, saying this is what I voted for with a picture of whatever, Alex Pretti getting shot. Oh, that 75,000 likes, that must be popular. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that must be what people like. I just don't think that is the case. I think that it's a mistake. And I say this to even people who might nominally agree with me or who do agree with me on many things. I think it's a mistake to see support for your beliefs online and likes and retweets as real support for something. I think it'd be an indicator of some kind of mood among some parts of the population, but oftentimes it is a way to fool yourself into thinking that your beliefs are popular. Because I think for a lot of people, it's like how people are like, everybody believes in, socialism or whatever. Like, look how popular this stuff is on TikTok. It's just not the case. It's just not the case. It's not how it works. And I think predicating that strategy or that mindset on the posts of people who revel in cruelty has a lifespan that is much shorter than people would than these people might believe. And it's, again, I think that this whole like acting like Darth Vader bullshit, I don't think it flies. I just don't think it flies. I think what you actually see is something like the Alex Pretti shooting, and then a bunch of people going like, man, I don't like that. The people are not as I think it's maybe some of these people have tricked themselves into thinking that Trump really is a Caesar figure. But that's not even how, like, Trump is a guy who looks at how things are. He watches the news. He watches the news religiously. He is very sensitive to bad press.
And he knows how things play on TV.
Exactly. And
well,
I think he realizes this doesn't play.
I think, a few things. One, you're already seeing like Republican senators and congressmen break with the Trump admin on this and calling for like de-escalation, or even so far as saying, like, you mentioned the INS thing. There was one, it was like on Fox, where they were discussing how DHS should have never been created. We should have just had INS stay under DOJ.
Oh yeah, Laura Ingraham saying this.
It's
I mean,
so
listen, DHS
funny.
is a war on terror vehicle. You know what I mean?
I really wouldn't. You're talking about Democrats like needing to square the circle on immigration. I really would not be surprised to see them trot out E-Verify again and try to push this just on employers. But all of this is coming, in the environment where Trump is underwater in like every swing state, and you have the upcoming midterms, and everyone is terrified of what that might look like, and what that might mean then for a Trump presidency, particularly Trump. I mean, Trump probably rightfully thinking that if they lose the Senate, he's going to be impeached like every second of the day, which probably true.
I know,
and they'll just like railroad him. So it's I think that like watching kind of the response here versus in other incidents, it feels different. Like this is very different, I think, from a lot of the past viral moments of this administration.
Well, I'll say one thing to watch out for is, this is an administration that is very concerned with narrative. And I would watch out for them as they see narrative control slipping away for some lashing out.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're going to try to do here. I will say, I wonder, because remember when that home bribery shit got leaked earlier this year?
Yes.
Now I'm kind of like, I wonder if Noam's going to fucking pull the trigger on that and be like,
Maybe.
release the documents.
That would be so funny.
She
She just goes like full setting the car on fire.
I mean, a fair warning to our fucking Groyper and neo-Nazi listeners out there. I think that there is a limit that you can get away with your like Pinochet sort of like LARPing with this shit. And it is always a mistake to overestimate your support. Always underestimate it. Always underestimate everything. But it's a mistake to believe that everyone will agree with you and that everybody like just wants to kill the left because that is what you see on your group chats or whatever. It's a mistake. And I got to tell you, it's an unfortunate reality. The left, aside from like presence on the actual ground, is a kind of almost a non-factor in much of this, like the organized left. This is really like so much of this is actually sort of fighting between these liberal figures like Waltz and Fry and the administration. And the left is sort of seen as like people to go after, but like they're not people who are really able to strike back themselves. And that's something I consider a lot because it's just, it's like you're a player without the ability to win.
It's fun. I will say I'm kind of conflicted on some of this, which is like, on the one hand, I believe that America cocoons deserve what they voted for. And on the other hand, as a patriot, which we're always saying on this show,
I really do love this country and the people within it. I
really can't abide by any of this. And I think if we're speaking in terms of, say, like a return to genuine republicanism, this is what I would say. I think, you're always talking about law and order.
I'm a law and order guy.
If we want to talk about law and order and restoring trust in our institutions, this is what my demand would be. I will tell you. One, this is also blatantly unconstitutional and is clearly a deliberate strategy to provoke internal enemies.
Yes.
That the response has to be demanding accountability, like literally all the way up the chain, which means anyone within the security apparatus responsible for setting rules of engagement, including training and enforcement standard, should be fully court-martialed.
Yeah.
I mean, like completely. Any public official involved who's spoken about this with any kind of like prejudice should be thrown up there too. Like, no, like don't hold back. Like, just be sick of this shit. I think people really want to see that. It's like none of the behavior that we've seen should be tolerated at all from any administration or like civilian national security officials. They should all be tried in federal court, and the minimum should be just barred from holding public office again.
Yeah.
They should all be pushed out of public life. All of that is doable, by the way, without changing anything, besides like straightening up some spines.
Yeah. The thing is, I just want to be the person that throws them in jail. This is what pisses me off. Like, I agree with you, but it's a simple thing as I wish my political beliefs were more popular. Because
I don't think any of this is, outside the bounds of what liberal democracy is capable of.
Oh, I know, but my political beliefs are well outside the bounds of liberal democracy. And that's the thing. It sucks, but I think a lot of people, this will also weirdly have the, all of this shit will have the result of making liberal democracy, I think, more attractive to people. A specific type of American constitutional liberal democracy that we do here. And so that's, I don't know, in my head, I'm like Newsom. All of this, I just hear the tread of Newsom coming down the road. And it's
It's
but
too
it's like,
early.
I know, but it's like, how much more of this? And I buy like all of this shit. Do people fucking like, do people just, will they just accept the President Newsom with fucking, your kid is fucking so stupid from AI all the time? He's a fucking drooling moron. And all you do, I don't even know what job you have at that point. And it's just like, the future that the liberals offer outside of immediate revenge, which they're not even offering yet, but I think that they will. Some of them are hinting at it, is just also so fucking unattractive. And I understand how it's attractive to anybody, that it's just the whole thing. Just, I don't know. It's they're but something will happen.
Well, until then, I'm Liz.
I'm Brace.
And I'm producer Young Chomsky.
And this has been TrueAnon. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.